Story 1. So this happened in 2011, so the exact dialogue may have escaped my memory a bit, but this situation is something I'll never forget. Also, AIM was still pretty active during this time, and so was video chatting. Remember this for later. I was on an online dating site and I was talking to this guy. I was 31 at the time and he was 28. We talked for about 6 weeks before I gave him my phone number, and we took it offline to calling and texting for another couple of weeks. 2 months after our initial chat, we were texting and he told me that he was out having a few beers at a bar near my house. He asked what I was doing and asked if I wanted to come out, but I had a very long day at work and didn't feel like going out to a bar. I invited him over to my place after he finished at the bar and he accepted. I figured I would be okay since I do keep firearms for protection and I know how to defend myself if need be. I also had a webcam and I took a shower so I wouldn't smell like a water buffalo on a hot day. Put on some makeup and got dressed to wait. He then called and said he was outside my house. I clicked record on my computer's webcam program and turned off my monitor and went to let him in. It's around 10 p.m. and he comes in and we go back to my bedroom because my living room was being remodeled. We're sitting on the bed chatting for about an hour, talking about everything under the sun. The conversation flowed. He was very handsome and so easy to be comfortable with. We got on the subject of firearms and I showed him mine. About 15 minutes later, he asks for some water. So why go to the kitchen and get him a bottle? When I come back, he said he got a phone call and had to leave. After he left, I looked on my nightstand and noticed my weapon was gone. I looked everywhere for it, thinking I'd put it down somewhere else. No, not there. I then played back the recording from my webcam program, and sure enough it shows him grabbing it and putting it in his hoodie. I was terrified at that point. He knew where I lived, he had my firearm, and he left his phone on my bed. Right then his phone rings, and I answer it. I come to find out he's married. His wife was calling him wondering where he was. I told her everything, including the fact that he stole my firearm, and I had video evidence and was calling the police on him. Next thing I know, he's banging on my door, my firearm in his hand, asking for his phone. I need my phone. Give me my phone. He says, take the clip out of my firearm, empty the chamber, throw the clip into the bushes, the one in the chamber across the road, and put it on the ground. I tell him no, give me my phone. He retorts, I'm on the phone with your wife at the moment and I have you on video stealing from me. I tell them I put his wife on speaker. She unleashes a whole bunch of expletives. He runs and gets in his car, then comes back, and I threw your gun in the ditch. He tells me at this point I make him empty his pockets, take his pants off, take his hoodie off, and show me that he doesn't have my firearm on him. He proceeds to tell me that I don't know how hard it is for him, being a felon, not being allowed to own a firearm ever because of a mistake he made. The mistake, you may ask, domestic violence involving a firearm. We get up the road. He tells me my firearm is there in the ditch. Then I realized the situation I'm in. I can get out of the car and go get it, leaving him to do whatever to me if he chose. He was 6'4", 225 pounds, and me, on the other hand, 5'3", 135 pounds, or I could make him go get it. Taking the chance of him seriously hurting me, I took that chance since I was on the phone with his wife and my phone with 911. He retrieves my firearm, brings it back to the car, and I drive back to my house and wait on the police. Now get out of the car, and he gets in the driver's seat. I'm still on the phone with the police. I walk around the back of his car to get the license plate number, and he just puts his car in reverse, hits me, and takes off. They found him later that evening. He still had the clip and the one in the chamber in his pocket, so now he's enjoying present time. I'm so glad I never have to meet this person again. Story 2. I live in a major U.S. city. I made the move here during the pandemic, and as there wasn't much going on, I made the habit of having some beers and food at the local lakeside parked near me. You see and meet all different types of people. At the beginning of this year, on a day that wasn't too wet or cold, I made my way down to the lake. I brought a sandwich, a couple of beers, and was listening to a true crime podcast. I found a little group of trees, pretty dry and pretty out of the way. I was hard to spot, so when I noticed this man walking towards me, I knew he was going to ask for a cigarette. Even from a distance he seemed weird, so I thought I'll give this underscore a cigarette so he doesn't get pissy about it and let him be on his way. Sure enough, this guy offers me some Doritos in exchange for a cigarette. I say no to the chips, but tell him he can just have one just to get him away. And be done with it. He introduces himself and we launch into a meandering conversation. He's weird and I can't shake the feeling that this guy is off, but let the conversation itself is pretty normal. I just don't want to get this guy angry when there's not a lot of people around. 2 hours later, after talking about all sorts of stuff, and I finally excuse myself and leave. Less than a week later, I'm having a post-work beer at a bar when I hear a voice. I look up and there he is. I tell myself, screw this, if this guy tries to corner me again to talk, I'm going straight to the bartender to get him off my back. I'm here to chill, not chat. Let us not get to that, as he whines about the TV, the music, the price. To the point the bartender kicks him out before he notices me. When he did get angry, he really got aggressive and was ready to fight. I knew it a few weeks later. The bartender tells me a story. He'd run into an old-time regular who seemed frazzled. He explained that while walking to the bar, he saw some guy who recognized it. Hey, you're Chris, you're regular from the bar back in the day. The regular denied it, said he didn't know what this guy was talking about. Why? Because turns out 30 years ago this abducted a woman, kept her alive long enough to make sure she told him the right information to make ATM withdrawals with a bank card, killed her, and dumped the body. He got caught because he was driving her car around with her blood all over the back seat, making maximum daily withdrawals from the same ATM every day. When he got caught, he bragged about how they'd never find the body. The bartender and I were able to corroborate this story because we found some articles online about the murder mugshot and all. The guy looked 30 years younger, sure, but it was him. Story 3. New Year's Eve 5 years ago, I went away for the night with my 2 best friends in one of their moms. I was home for the holidays from college, and my friend Sarah invited me to go to Palm Springs to celebrate New Year's with her mom and our friend Rachel. I didn't have any other plans, so I decided to go with them. We went to a cool city about an hour from where we live that is big on shopping and resorts. We planned to have a pretty calm night, watch the ball drop at a block party thing downtown, have a few drinks at a bar. Since we're on the West Coast, the ball drop is at 9, so at around 8 we ventured from our hotel, walking to the block party about a mile away. On the way we passed a very lively bar. We decided to stop by and spend about 15 minutes dancing, but we didn't get any drinks. It was a gay bar, and Sarah and Rachel, being gay, they were stoked on it and wanted to come back after the ball drop, even though it was about 90% men there. We continue on to the block party, get some dinner and a glass of champagne. The ball dropped and they had a DJ, so we spent about an hour there dancing. After we got tired of it, we decided to head back to the bar and hang out there until midnight. Once we get there, Sarah's mom pays for a drink for each of us, but leaves us soon after that because she was tired. It's about 10:30 at this point, and Sarah, Rachel and I are enjoying our drinks and having fun dancing. Rachel tried some of my drink since it was one she hadn't had before, and I constantly have my guard up when drinking in public, and I felt safe at this bar because it was 90 gay men who I thought would not have an interest in me. I went back to the bar to get a second drink, and that's the last thing I remember. The rest I've gathered from Sarah and Rachel. Almost immediately after getting my second drink, I asked Rachel to go to the bathroom with me because I wasn't feeling well, even though I was completely fine. 10 minutes before, once in the bathroom, I just collapsed on the floor and I was almost unresponsive. Rachel, now worried, somehow drags my half-lifeless body out to where Sarah was waiting for us. Security, seeing my condition and assuming I was wasted, asked us to leave. Sarah and Rachel decide to take me back to the hotel about half a mile away. By this point, I was unconscious and there were barely sounds escaping from my mouth. They saw someone leave the bar at the same time as us who was walking near us, but they were preoccupied with trying to keep my lifeless body off the ground. At one point, I threw up all over myself, the both of them, the sidewalk, and all that. The next part of the story we had to get from Sarah, and Rachel doesn't have memory of this, still struggling to carry me. The man they saw leaves the bar, approached them. He was hitting on Rachel, trying to get her to grab a drink with them. She was very agitated and told him to leave, that her friend needed help right now. He didn't take a note for an answer and continued to follow us down the street, asking if they wanted to get drinks with him, if he can help carry me and search. A middle-aged woman witnessing this came up and told the man off, something along the lines of, "Stop harassing these young women or I'm going to call the police." He left after that. Next, by some miracle, an EMT and his wife, enjoying the holiday, run into us on the Street he checked me out to make sure something wasn't majorly wrong, and then he carried me the rest of the way to the hotel and into the room since my friends could barely hold me up. They thanked him profusely and him and his wife laughed. This is where Rachel's memory kicks back in. 5 minutes later they get a knock on the door and it's the EMT and his wife again. They came to let us know that a man followed us to the hotel and that they just saw him hop the gate in and start to make his way to our room. My friends called hotel security, but they were unable to find him. My friends didn't get a glimpse of him, but I'm sure it was the man from earlier. I spent the rest of the night vomiting everything in my body and dry heaving after that. I woke up the next morning in a pile of pillows and blankets on the bathroom floor. My last memory was at the bar, getting a second drink, and my friends filled me in on everything that happened. Feeling like, I thought I must have drank way too much, but I'd never blacked out before in my life, and the amount of drinks I had didn't add up to me being completely unconscious. It was 2 in 2 hours. We decided my first drink had to have been dropped since Rachel had some memory of it and had no memory of our walk home, even though she was fully functional. I'm sure that the man that was talking to Rachel and then followed us back was the one that slipped something into my drink. To this day, I don't really know how I could have been slipped something. I got my drink from the bar and never set it down. My best guess was that it was already in the cup. Thankfully, I had good friends and kind strangers protecting me that night. It keeps me up at night thinking what could have happened under different circumstances. Story 4. This happened one summer when I was 12 to 13. It was before cell phones were common. My mother rented a cabin that we would stay at 4 hours north of our home. My father could not attend due to the fact that he was working, but that was fine with him. We drove up to the cabin. It was cute enough from the outside. There were several cookie-cutter cabins you could rent that all arched around in a C-shape with parking spots in front, and at the front of the line of cabins was where the owner of the cabin stayed, in the front desk area, if you will. Anyway, when we first arrived, we were the only people there. No other cabins had been rented out, even though it was August, and this area, although semi-remote, is a tourist destination. The gentleman that worked at the front desk came out to greet us. I didn't pay too much attention due to the fact I was 12 and excited for the fun outdoors adventure that my mother and I were going to have. Wow, I remember him giving my mom the kings and saying the bathroom window is broken and does not close all the way or lock. We thought it was strange, but kind of shocked it off. After a day of adventure, we went out, came back in at dusk, and we went to bed. The next morning, Saturday, we woke up and went to get in the truck. It would not start. Strange, I will admit. At the time it was a newer SUV. I don't recall what was wrong with it, but I remember the owner of the cabinets coming out and saying, "Your truck is broke. Too bad, let me call someone." My mom insisted she could call someone and went into his office and used the phone. She called someone to come and fix it. As we were waiting for someone to get there, the owner came out and said, "Did you guys have any problems with the power last night?" My mom and I shook our heads confused. "Well, sometimes in that cabin the power will randomly go out. All you have to do is come out here and flip the breaker." He then proceeded to show my mom where the breaker was. After getting the truck fixed, having another day of adventure, we came back ready to settle in for the night. As we were sitting in bed watching television, the power went out. It didn't flicker, just boom out. My mom grabbed a flashlight she packed and we went out there and turned the breaker back on. At this point, we were feeling incredibly uneasy, like anyone would be. We got back in bed, and about 10 minutes later the power went out again. My mom jumped up and ran outside, only to see a man running away from the fuse box. We hightailed it out of there so fast. Luckily, everything had been packed because we were leaving the next day. Story 5. And about 2 years ago, me and my family moved from New Jersey to Florida for a fresh start. Before I start my encounter, I want to iterate my mental state at the time because it contributes to how I acted at the time of this story. So the night of the move, my mother got a call from a close family friend. She just become pregnant and it started to have complications and feared she lost the baby. My mother, being the awesome woman she is, went over to help and watch her young son and call my friend down and told her to go to the hospital to be sure and check her. She and her husband rushed to the hospital, and luckily she hadn't lost the baby. But it wasn't until 1 in the morning until my mother got back, and I was still up waiting for her to get back. So yes, we were dead tired the next day when we had to pack everything up for the long trip to our new home in Florida, while my father, who would slept through The whole ordeal the night before was not, but that's just me bitching anyway. I'm driving with my mother while my father is in another car. I'm not exactly happy about the move, so tired and upset. We continue with our trip. We've always driven from New Jersey to Florida for years and never had any really weird experiences out on the road. I'm not sure about my parents, but they've never talked about anything creepy in my 22 years I've been alive. And I've traveled with them, and trust me, they love to tell stories, and I do too. So when this happened, I was wholly unprepared for it. It certainly didn't help with what happened the night before either, so we stop at one of the many stops on our way to Florida, and I think we were in the Carolinas, or somewhere near there when we stopped. Now, if you've never traveled before by car, a rest stop is a place kind of like a civic center or rest area. These places are for travelers who either need a minute to stretch, go to the bathroom, or a place where they can safely rest for the night in their cars. These places are usually well lit and they have vending machines for anyone who needs a snack or drink. It was late, maybe about 9 at night, and we stopped to stretch our legs and go to the bathroom. I wanted a few snacks, so I asked my mother for some dollar bills. She gave them to me, and I entered the nice little enclosed area that contained the machines. So I'm standing there alone, picking what I want, when this woman comes in. She's a short, skinny older woman who's dressed nice with bleach blonde hair. When I glanced at her and smiled politely, she came right up to me and holds out her hand for a shake and introduces herself. Dumbfounded, I shake her hand back and stupidly told her my name. After that, she launches into this whole tale of woe about how she lost her wedding ring, had a head wound, and that a car was out of gas and she needed some money, and other things I can't honestly remember. And I'm just standing there listening and trying to figure out how to get out of this situation. Now you have to understand, this was literally the first time anyone had ever approached me at one of these stops, mostly because I don't think I have the most friendliest faces for people to approach for help. Even though I'm a girl, I'm tall at around 5'5" to 5'6", broad-shouldered, and I resemble my father, who doesn't have the most welcoming of faces either, and acts it. But me, I'm a bleeding heart, and I never want to be rude to people, but in this situation I would have been if it hadn't been so out of the blue. When I'm in situations that are new to me, I tend to freeze up and can't think, and I don't know how to act or what to do in situations I'm not expecting. As you can guess, I'm a big introvert and socially awkward, but I don't have a problem with telling people to understand her off. But in this situation, I'm outright panicking and just want to get away from this weird woman. And I want to say weird because of the head injury I mentioned. She didn't have one, not even a bruise, and she was talking so fast and non-stop I couldn't even tell her no, I can't help, or even try to. For some reason, being polite was more important than getting the understand away. So I'm standing there exhausted to my bones, about to shove what little money I have at her, so she just goes away. When my mother walks in, my badass of a mother comes right in and says I can't do anything and tells me to come with her. A woman takes a step back and I realize just how close she was. I hadn't even noticed. She was steadily coming closer. As she was talking, she tells my mother how beautiful and nice I am, when in reality I look like a greasy mess because I don't care about my appearance. When I take a road trip, my mother doesn't really respond, and she has me by the arm walking towards the bathroom, asking if I'm okay. The woman got out of there and goes the opposite direction of where she said her car was. Looking back on it all, at the time I thought it was just weird, and I was certainly weirded out by it all. But I just thought whatever. But after listening to YouTube and reading Reddit posts of let's not meet in the search, I realize how lucky I was 2 years later that the situation hadn't escalated. I think the reason why she approached me was probably the dollar bills I mentioned earlier. They were folded, and it looked like I had a lot on me, even though I had like $6 or $7, and because it was probably obvious to her how tired I was and how much of an easy score she could have gotten in my tired, grumpy state. So if anyone reads this, I hope you weren't planning on traveling alone, but if you are, be careful of people, even completely normal-looking ones. You can never be too careful, especially due to older people looking for an easy score. Story 6. This happened in 2019. I no longer have contact with this person. When my husband and I lived in our first apartment together, I did not have a job. We had just moved to a new city, and I had trouble finding anything. Naturally, I was at home because of this every day. At the same time, I would walk my dog Remy. We would always walk the same route in front of the leasing office across the street by the basketball courts and by the tennis courts before walking the rest of the property of the apartment complex. The first encounter I had with this guy gave me tons of red flags, and I did report him to the leasing office because of his behavior as I was walking Remy back home. This man, who looks like he was in his 40s, glasses and gray hair, was walking from the basketball court to the sidewalk. I start with Remy because she was going to try and jump on him if he got close enough. He noticed us and asked, "Is she aggressive?" I told him, "No, she'll just jump on you. And I know some people don't like dogs or dogs jumping on them." He looked me up and down, staring at my chest for a second, then he asked if he could pet her. I said sure, because Remy's tail was going a million miles an hour. She was whining to meet a new person. He started to talk to me while he was patting Remy. "I'm Joe, I just moved in across the street. What's your dog's name?" I was nice to him, even though I had a weird feeling while talking to him. "This is Remy, I'm Megan, I live next to the groundskeeper with my fiancée. You'll like it here, the staff are awesome." The entire time I was talking, he was petting Remy and staring at my chest. Joe thanked me for letting him pet my dog and then turned around to leave. I was weirded out but brushed it off. I told myself it was probably nothing. I walked Remy the rest of the way home. But I noticed that Joe had went into the entrance of his apartment building, but he was watching me walk home through the glass. I hightailed it the rest of the way to my apartment. It had freaked me out enough, so I called the leasing office and told them that Joe watched me walk home after meeting me and that I was generally uncomfortable with him. I also had them come fix the blinds in our dining rooms because I didn't want anyone looking inside our apartment. After I loaded myself into the car and drove myself to my mother-in-law's house, I stayed there until my now husband got home. Anytime I walked Remy and eventually Peach, my other dog. Joe always was somehow outside when I was. He always tried to come talk to me or pet the dogs. Luckily, when I would walk Peach, she would growl at him if I ever walked the dogs with my husband. He would never come talk to me. It was only if I was alone or with Remy. He would also start walking by the front of our apartment. When my husband wasn't home, he would try to look through the sliding door to get a glimpse of me, my husband, and I decided to move into a bigger apartment because we needed more space for the dogs and ourselves. The day I got the keys for our new apartment just down the street, I had another experience with Joe that made me call the cops. I was walking both of the darks around the block so I could finish up some last minute packing. I saw Joe pull into the complex in his car. I stopped to let him go past me, but he waved me to cross the road. When I did cross, he pulled around really fast with his window already rolled down. "Hey Megan, I was wondering, are you happy with your husband? If not, I can help you out." You looked me up and down and gave me a wink. I acted like I didn't hear him since I had headphones in. I immediately went inside and locked the door behind me. I called the leasing office and told them what happened. I also let them know I was going to call the cops and at least make a report because his behavior was freaking me out. I wanted to at least have it documented. I called a non-emergency line and an officer came out. I told him what happened that day in some of the creepy behavior Joe had before. The cop asked me, "Do you want me to give him a warning not to talk to you?" And I said yes. I thanked the officer for his time and he took my name and phone number down. He went to the leasing office to talk to the staff about the situation. About an hour later, the cop laughed. He gave me a call. He told me he's talked with the property manager of my apartment and the also Rancho's license plate. He told me his name and told me that the leasing office said he has other complaints from other tenants on file. He also mentioned he didn't get a chance to talk to him because Joe was leaving as the cop arrived at the leasing office. I thanked him again for his time and finished packing. I decided to go to the leasing office to talk to the property manager so I could clear up anything just in case. When I got there, the manager told me that Joe had multiple reports just like the officer had told me. She also told me she was going to have our on-site officer stop and talk to him and encourage him not to talk to me or other female residents. I thanked her and went home to start moving little things until my husband got home. I went almost 6 months without another incident with Joe. We moved to the 3rd floor and he didn't have any idea which apartment was us, so he wouldn't bother us. I also made it a point to have the dogs on a certain schedule so I would never run into him if we were out. The last time Joe tried to talk to me, I turned around and walked away. I didn't let him get a word in. I did notice him harassing my neighbor outside while she was grilling one day. I told the leasing office about it just in case. A couple of months later he moved out because they wouldn't let him resign his Least that's the last I saw of Joe. I carried a stun gun with me when I walked the dogs, or by myself. Because of him, I was fully prepared to shock his ass a couple of times if he ever got close after I called the cops on him. Story 7. And I grew up in the military family, and we were stationed overseas for this story. We weren't in France, but my mom and dad went on a big girls' trip with a bunch of our friends to Paris over winter break. We were only supposed to spend 5 days there. The first few days went fine, and we all had a great time, but on one of the last days, all the moms got emailed that our flight back was cancelled due to snowstorms. We spent an afternoon hanging out in the Starbucks under the Louvre and trying to figure out travel plans to get back home to the other European country. We were all living well when the airlines rescheduled our flights. The several families were put on different flights over the next 3 days, but they scheduled me and my mom 4 different flights on different days. Yeah, a 9-year-old girl traveling alone wasn't going to work. The next flight they had available for us was a 4th day after everyone else. Our hotel room had bookings after we left, so my mom and I had to find another place to stay for some extra nights. Not a big deal, right? Right, well, when it came time for us to take a taxi to our next hotel room, us being the only family in Paris, the taxi driver gave us a weird look when he realized where he was taking us. Then he gave us a warning: don't go out at night. I may have been naive, but I knew enough to know that meant bad people in danger. I don't remember my mom's reaction, but I'm sure it wasn't good. We got to the hotel and it was nothing like what the hotel site had shown. They definitely lied on their site with stolen photos of a much better hotel, but my mom had already paid and it was only for 2 nights. We were sure not to stay out too late and had no issues the first night. The last day went fine. Actually, we went up to the Sacramento Basilica and hung around there for most of the day. When evening came, we made sure to go back to the hotel room early. That's when bad things happened. When darkness fell, we started to hear a lot of people in the hotel lobby. We were only on the 1st floor and basically right above the lobby. The hotel was built in an old apartment-type building for a European city space. We at first just turned on the French TV and tried to ignore it. Then there was pounding footsteps up the stairs and angry shouting at French. My mom definitely jumped at that and we had an uneasy feeling. Then the angry Frenchman started pounding on our door. We didn't speak French and most of what he was saying was slurred. We only caught things like "we know you're in there" and "we know you have them." I, being 9, I had no idea what they were talking about, but obviously my mom and I were terrified. She told me quietly to not make any sounds. Whatever state the TV was in, we kept it that way to make it seem like the other room was empty. The banging on the door just kept going and going, and the shouting didn't stop. The front desk people should have heard us, in all honesty, if we could hear them downstairs. There's no way they didn't hear our door being assaulted. My mom called our dad, who was at home in our host country. We got him to try and call the French police, as he speaks some French, but he couldn't get through. We were on our own. I slept with my clothes on, and we had a suitcase prepped in case we needed to run. Somehow, I, being 9, late at night on a long trip, somehow managed to get some sleep because I was so tired. My mom didn't sleep the whole night. At some point, I got woken up by the door cracking. My mom said she'd never been so scared in her life. The angry Frenchmen just kept going as they tried to break down our room door. The door didn't give though somehow, and eventually at some point in the early morning they left us alone. We left ASAP and went to the airport for the rest of the morning. Sure, my mom reported the hotel on the booking sites and we slept at our flight gate until it was a reasonable time to be awake. We ended up getting promoted to 1st class after an apology for the problem with his scheduling, and after the harrowing experience of the past night, we definitely took it. It took years of telling this crazy story for my mom to tell me the hotel lobby was probably selling and doing drugs down below us, which is why no one responded. The staff were all too high to do anything. The angry Frenchmen were either so high they were imagining someone else was hiding in our room, or their drugs were stashed in there and we didn't know about it. I have no idea how the door didn't break, but I'm so glad it didn't. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that. If you have a scary story of your own to share and you would like me to feature it on the channel, please send it to the email in the description, or if you prefer, head over to my subreddit, Our Stories from Mr. Revelant. It's the stories that keep the channel going. Thank you all for listening, and thank you to my channel members and patrons: April, James, Arterberg, Jan Joy, Handout, Pegasus, Genesis, Karen, Keating, V. Barry, LJ, Fiona, X Fox, Scott, I Like, Booty, Monica, Level, Ace, Chris, and Donna Holly Spry Kimber Jasmine. Cyanotics Heather Haven Kitty Cat Luna 2 ADHD Aurora Janice Cinderella Baby. Borderline Betty Lady Drackert Erica Nicole Snowball Ruthina Melanie the Honeybee. 987 Pretty Girl 215 Ryan Brooke. Wendy Crafty Cow Tina Dina. Vampy Dabs Patricia Amber Krista Brenda. Absinthe Alice Christy K Spider's Web. Ulala Andrea Sue Monique Sean Gorman. Emma Lisa Sigma Cubax Greg Chelsea. Amanda Jane Sam Zeptipi Surasi Austin Tegan Lil Smart. Jenny Gabrielle Fire 05 Sarah P. James Gargano Gemma Allen. Monica Levelace and Alex, I hope you're all doing well guys. I'll see you all on the next one.